Okay, hi everyone, welcome back to this video series on introduction to firewalls, IP filters in an IPSec policy. IPSec filters allow you to define different encryption methods for network traffic that matches specific IPSec filters. You can also configure the filter section of an IPSec filter to block or permit network traffic without regards to encryption settings. These block and permit filters can be used to implement packet filters on Windows 2000 computers. The only time you would use IPsec to implement packet filters in Windows 2000 is when you want to use group policy objects, GPOs, to apply the same packet filters to multiple computers. NAT protocol. Windows 2000 can also provide the network address translation function as long as you install the NAT routing protocol. To do so, right-click the IP routing general node in the routing and remote access console and choose new routing protocol to add the NAT protocol. This version of NAT is much more configurable than ICS. For example, you can configure whether NAT should include the DNS proxy function or the DHCP allocator function, to which IP address range that the DHCP allocator should use. You can even specify that NAT should only translate IP addresses through NAT and not translate ports as well, NAPT. If you don't enable port translation, the numbers of computers that can share the internet connection is limited by the number of IP addresses that your ISP has assigned to your external interface. This is called an address pool. You can configure the NAT protocol to forward all incoming network traffic on a specific port on the external IP address to a computer on the internal network. Windows 2000 calls this a special port mapping. If your ISP has assigned you multiple public IP addresses, you can also map traffic on all ports on a specific external IP address to a computer on the internal network. Windows 2000 calls this particular kind of static address mapping a reservation. Figure 13.4 shows the dialog box to add a reservation. For applications that embed IP or port information in the data portion of the IP packets, NAT requires specific NAT editors to substitute that information correctly. Windows 2000 includes fewer NAT editors than what is provided in Windows 98 SE and Windows ME. NAT editors are included for ICMP, ping, FTP, PPTP, and DirectPlay. Note that the PPTP NAT editor allows you to create a PPTP VPN tunnel from a computer on the internal network through the Windows 2000 NAT computer to a PPTP server on the internet, but doesn't allow you to establish a PPTP VPN tunnel from a computer on the internet to a PPTP server on the internal network. L2TP and IPSec. L2TP and IPSec are two new technologies in Windows 2000. Layer 2 tunneling protocol L2TP is a standards-based protocol used to create a VPN tunnel. IP security IPSec is a standards-based protocol used to authenticate or encrypt data transmitted between two computers. L2TP uses IPsec to encrypt the data in the VPN tunnel, but IPsec can be used without a VPN tunnel as well. L2TP server. Windows 2000 supports two tunneling protocols, PPTP and L2TP. The L2TP protocol is considered to be more secure than the PPTP protocol. The Windows 2000 computer that is connected to the internet can be the endpoint of a L2TP VPN tunnel. If you want to restrict the network traffic to this Windows 2000 L2TP VPN server, you have to create the packet filters that are shown in table 13.1. In this example, the Windows 2000 L2TP server has external IP address 23.0.1.65. So table.13.1 input any 23.0.1.65 UDP 500 IKE input any 23.0.1.65 UDP 1701 L2TP output 23.0.1.65 any UDP 500 IKE output 23.0.1.65 any UDP 1701 L2TP. In this situation, no specific firewall rules are required to allow IPsec ESP traffic because the routing and remote access filters are applied after the IPsec module of Windows 2000 TCP has removed the ESP header. IPsec. Windows 2000 can also use IPsec without bothering to establish an L2TP VPN tunnel. How, you may ask? Remember that IPsec is mainly used to authenticate or encrypt network packets between computers on the internal network itself. However, you can also deploy IPsec to authenticate or encrypt data packets traveling between two Windows 2000 computers that are connected to the internet. An example is using an IPsec ESP tunnel to connect two branch offices. If you want to filter the network traffic to include only IPsec packets, you have to create the packet filters that are shown in table 13.2. So we'll say here input 23.0.2.12 23.0.1.65 UDP 500 IKE input 23.0.2.12 23.0.1.65 ID 50 any IPsec ESP input 23.0.2.12 23.0.1.65 ID 51 any IPsec output 23.0.1.65 23.0.2.12 UDP 500 IKE output 23.0.1.65 23.0.2.12 ID 50 any IPsec ESP output 23.0.1.65 23.0.2.12 ID 51 any IPsec on the other Windows 2000 server with IP address 23.0.2.12, you have to create similar packets. The IPsec ESP protocol provides integrity for the entire packet except for the IP header. If you want to provide integrity for the entire packet, including the IP header, you have to implement an IPsec tunnel that uses both the ESP and AH protocol. For an IPsec tunnel that doesn't use the IPsec AH protocol, you don't have to create the two IPsec AH packet filters from table 13.2 Windows XP. Okay, Windows XP is Microsoft's latest desktop operating system. It contains many security enhancements over earlier Windows desktop versions such as Windows ME, Windows NT 4.0. Some of the security enhancements in Windows XP are related to protecting the connection to the internet. For example, Windows XP won't allow any local users to connect to the Windows XP computer as themselves. All incoming connections are done as guest. Even if you know the password of the administrator account for the computer, this technique is called simple file sharing. By default, this option is enabled for Windows XP computers that are used at home. Open Explorer and use the folder options command from the Tools menu. The View tab in the folder options dialog box contains the Use Simple File Sharing option. Internet Connection Firewall, ICF. By far the most important improvement related to protecting the connection to the internet is the new Internet Connection Firewall, ICF, in Windows XP. ICF is a stateful firewall built into Windows XP and Windows Server 2003. The firewall can be enabled per network adapter or dial-up adapter. Enabling the firewall consists of enabling a single checkbox. So 1, choose control panel network connections. 2, right-click on the dial-up adapter or the network adapter that is connected to the internet and select properties. 3, on the advanced tab, enable the checkbox in the internet connection firewall box and then click OK. After the firewall is enabled, the icon for the network connection is displayed with a little padlock to indicate that it is firewalled. Figure 13.5 shows ICF enabled on the dial-up adapter. ICF allows any outgoing traffic and will normally only allow inbound traffic to the Windows XP computer if it is a response to an earlier packet sent out. When you click the Settings button on the Advanced tab where you enabled ICF, you can configure ICF to allow more incoming network packets by specifying the services that this computer uses. Examples are FTP server, web server, HTTP, and remote desktop. Windows Server 2003. Windows Server 2003 is the successor to Windows 2000 Server. This newer server operating system from Microsoft has been available since April 2003. The features of Windows Server 2003 are related to protecting the connection to the internet, are a combination of the functions described for Windows 2000 and the Internet Connection Firewall of Windows XP. The same functionality with regard to packet filtering, routing and remote access support and IPSec encryption are included in Windows Server 2003. Internet Connection Firewall, ICF, in Windows Server 2003 is basically the same as the one in Windows XP with one minor improvement. One of the shortcomings of ICF in Windows XP is that it doesn't work during startup or shutdown of the computer. This possible window where the server could be connected without protecting from the firewall is closed by a new feature of IPSec in Windows Server 2003. Whenever a Windows Server 2003 computer starts, the IPSec driver blocks all connections from the network to the computer. This includes the internal network and a possible connection to the internet. During startup, the IPSec driver only allows outgoing network packets and their answer. The only exception to this is that this incoming network traffic on port 68 is allowed. To support DHCP configuration of the server, note that you can only enable ICF on a Windows Server 2003 computer if routing and remote access is not configured. If routing and remote access is enabled, then you must use a special version of ICF, known as Basic Firewall, built into routing and remote access. Its functions are exactly the same as ICF. This is similar to the way in which Internet Connection Sharing (ICS) in Windows 2000 is a simple version of the much more configurable NAT found in Routing and Remote Access Console of Windows 2000. So I'm going to leave it here to see for this video. If you like listening, please consider like, sharing and subscribing. Thank you.